Welcome everyone to Survivor Stockwatch. All right, here's the slides. Here's the rule book. Here's the fallen. Here are all the contenders. Here's Andy. Here's Rachel. Here's my Ejik. Here's Will's
He's the better Ejik.
We're moving from stage. Add the closing statements. Thank you. Patreon, Shop, Instagram, X, YouTube, Spotify. This has been the Stocks. Will, anything else to say?
Woo!
All right, thank you. Have a great night. Nah, we're kidding. Welcome, everyone, to Survivor Stockwatch, episode 11, a very festive Survivor Stockwatch.
Yeah.
I'm Jack. With me is Will. Well, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Now, Mr. Jack Powell, I'm glad you mentioned Thanksgiving because I have a question for you.
You have a question for me?
Yeah. It's a little questionnaire.
Okay.
So you know how people always ask you, they're like, "Hey, what's your favorite Thanksgiving side?" Right? Like that's a very well. I'm not asking that. What's your favorite Thanksgiving song? Like, you know, there's Christmas music. What's your favorite Thanksgiving music?
All right, that's the joke. All right. Well, if I had to pick a favorite Thanksgiving song, since there's clearly so many of them out there,
There's a lot to pick.
There's a lot of Thanksgiving songs. I really like the Charlie Brown Thanksgiving music. I really like the Charlie Brown Thanksgiving special. I think it's the most underrated animated piece of television of all time. I love
Thanksgiving one or just Charlie Brown?
No, Thanksgiving. The Charlie Brown's not underrated, but the Thanksgiving episode is incredibly underrated. I love that one. That's personally my favorite Thanksgiving Charlie Brown episode, probably. Yeah. What about you? What's your favorite Thanksgiving song?
I really like Happy Thanksgiving by the band Saving Bruce. It's going to be on the new album, so the whole ode to Thanksgiving.
Were you just probing me with that question for a plug?
No, because we don't have a song called Happy Thanksgiving. Why would we have that?
Oh my gosh. Hey Jay, good to see you. Yeah, so you know, it's Black Friday. We're gonna take a chill today, not go super crazy. Everything is mostly the same with our opinions. Will's got his sunglasses on already, 2 minutes into this podcast. We're going to go quick. You know, we're going to get you in and out, little lunch break, and then you can go shopping or watching the 3 o'clock NFL game, whatever you want to do. So we get right into it. It's pretty cookie cutter, this episode. Survivor Stockwatch, most professional season yet. We remind you of the rule book, most importantly. You know, individual player rankings, the slashes. You're telling me, Joe. That's very true. Remind you of the rule. Remind you of the rule book here. And no extra slide today, no guest today, although we thank Quinn and Carson for being our back-to-back guests. Very amazing podcast. Go check those out. Here we go. So Kyle is finally gone. We did it. It took – how many episodes do we have him at last? 4 in a row? We had him in last place, and he finally went home this episode. This was always going to happen. I mean, we knew it was going to happen at some point. I feel like sooner rather than later was always the question. Was it going to be that Kyle was going home now, or was he going home later in the game? But I think like the Bruce Peralt trajectory from 45 is perfect. You know, Bruce won a couple of immunities there in the end, became the threat, and then once he lost, it was basically over for him. But regardless, classy send-off. I like those respectful send-offs. I think it's like, you know, to me, I think a lot of people. My dog is looking. What do you want? What are you looking?
All right, you're getting sidetracked here.
It's my dog. He's looking at me.
Bring him in.
There he is. He's right there. Look at him. He's just sitting there. Yeah, but no, I mean, I like the respectful send-off. The bitter send-offs are good. I think there can be a happy medium. I think Kyle being respectful in the send-off was the right ending to his character. He was never going to be a big player in the winning story. I think Kyle from early on was always going to be a footnote or like someone in the season. We didn't realize that he would be an immunity juggernaut and become a really nice footnote for Survivor 47. But hey, I mean, maybe his work here on Survivor 47 could translate to being on Survivor 50. I mean, there's not a lot of surprisingly physically dominant players in the new era, save for like Franny,
Yeah.
Like Kyle's got some good stuff. We could see him on season 50. But what do you think, Will? Did you like Kyle?
I was a big Kyle fan. I think what the season is doing right so far is really apparent with Kyle, where they build up the character first and then have an emotional payoff. I remember back when the new era first started, right? Everyone hated the background packages, the emotional background packages, because there'd be like 12 in episode 1, and no one knew the characters, and so already hearing an emotional backstory, it was just kind of grating after a while. Yeah. I feel like with Kyle, it was set up in a way to where we all knew that he was like the de facto Southern nice guy, all around American good boy. And so it ending with his tribal council exit of giving everyone a hug and showing his gratitude, I personally really, really liked it. I don't mind, people being touchy-feely when they, not touchy-feely, being soft.
Did we lose Will?
Huh?
Did we lose you?
Am I being gaslit?
Was I lost?
I think you were lost.
I don't know. Ernie, what do you think? Was I lost or was he lost?
Ernie sides with Will. Anywho, but I think being so close to having 5 challenge wins, and I think with a reset of his social game and strategic game, because he doesn't need much. He just needs like a Steven Fishback. He needs just someone he needs a Rome, honestly, or a Genevieve of his own, in order to really make waves. Will I remember him in 12 years? Probably not.
Probably not. I think the last question was getting rid of Gabe last round the right move for Kyle, because in a way it's getting rid of someone who's in his shadow and someone who's always going to be kind of vying for that top threat spot, but was getting rid of him kind of like, I won't say the catalyst, but like kind of the door opening for other people. It was like, okay, Gabe is gone. Gabe was a big threat and he could win challenges, not as good as Kyle. But now that Kyle is basically the sole threat, really besides Genevieve at this rate, should Kyle have gotten rid of Gabe? Do you think it really would have been a good move for him or not?
No, I think getting rid of Gabe was the right move, because think of it like this, right? If you are one threat out of many threats and a player wants to use a threat as a shield, they have options to pick from. So they can side with Kyle, someone who's very dominant physically, or they can side with Genevieve, someone dominant strategically, or Gabe, because Gabe was a mixture of both. Gabe was really, really good strategically and had some physical chops as well. And so I think by getting rid of all of the smaller threats, or not smaller threats, all the bigger threats, you kind of make your target so well known. It's kind of like what Tony Vlachos did. You make your target, your threat level so high that it goes back down, conversely. And so I think that's what Kyle was going for. It's just, I think he was just too lacking socially or strategically to where he needed to win the challenge. And I also
go ahead.
I was going to say, I like the foreshadowing. Kyle starts the episode by saying, hey, I need to win the challenge or I'm cooked. What happens? He loses. And by golly, he was cooked.
Pretty simple. I think a good point to end off on Kyle was that this episode, he talks about, my social game. I really need to work on my social chops. I really need to work on my strategic chops because that was clearly lacking. I mean, when you win so many immunities, the social game kind of falls away because you have that safety blanket to where you don't need to socialize because you're in danger. There's no fear and there's no real motivation in that. You're just kind of sitting by. And, people commented on it this episode. Kyle's going to sit by the fire. He's going to do nothing. And that was commented on by Sam, who is still number 7. We think he's going to be going this next episode. Sam feels like he's a dead man walking. He's like hanging around. He's trying to find a crack in the game. He can't find anything. And I mean, I think the angle that he's going for, that him, Kyle, and Genevieve are going for, is the lower threats need to go. The people that are going to take up a spot, like a GOAT spot at the end, they have to go. And that can be a good strategy. But the problem is that the GOATs this season, the 5 others, not only are they bigger in numbers, but they're not as susceptible to that kind of sway. They're not like going to listen to that because they realize there's power in numbers and they realize that taking one of these bigger threats would be game suicide, strategic suicide. And so Sam's strategy, it's a great strategy. It's just this season it does not work. And so you have to find something else. It's a crazy fall from grace. I mean, he's done nothing realistically to lower his threat level. Sure, I mean, he could outlast Genevieve. He can make it to 6th. I don't see him making the finale. I think we've been on the nose, Will. I think this episode, it was clear. Kyle, Sam, and Genevieve are on the bottom, and one of Sam or Genevieve is going to go home next episode. Like, I think, Jay, you could be on something. Sam might survive one more because it feels like he's a lesser threat than Genevieve. But it could really be either one of them at this rate. So
yeah. No, I agree entirely. And I do think it's Sam over Genevieve because I feel like Genevieve still has some outs. I think people are afraid of her too much. And so I feel like Sam is a smaller threat. And so I think people are going to feel safer taking him out first. There might be fears about Gata working together as well. I know Rachel doesn't really trust Sam a whole lot. I think whoever goes next and how it's set up, I think will make who ends up winning really clear. Because I think Andy's going to want Genevieve gone, and I think Rachel's going to want Sam gone, or Genevieve. But I don't know. Sam's just still in a weird position, kind of like Carla again from Survivor 43.
A little bit, yeah.
Fall from grace. I cannot speak today. I do apologize. But I'm stuttering now. But yeah, no, I feel like Sam, I could see him surviving one more, but then again, not really. I think he's also he just looks like a threat if you look at him.
Yeah, he looks like a threat. He's talked about being a threat. You know,
he's a threat.
I think that's gonna spell doom for him. I just don't think that he hasn't made the right amount of connections with people to really last. He's made connections to get him through the game, but he essentially relied on Sierra and Rachel and Andy at the beginning of the merge, and only this episode did we really see him trying to build a bond. And it was with Kyle and Genevieve, and one of them's gone, and the other one's one of the biggest threats in the game. Yep. And speaking of that biggest threat in the game, we'll get to her right now. I mean, there's no point in hiding it. She's sitting right near the edge. It feels like she'll be the second option until she goes. She'll be always brought up as a name. She'll be surviving close tribals. And I think that will even bring up her threat level more as the end of the game goes on. This episode in particular reminds me of why, I think one of the big themes of Survivor Stockwatch this season is identifying who's a good winner and who's a good player. So often in Survivor Stockwatch, what are you doing? He's scratching at the bed. So often on Survivor Stockwatch, we're constantly talking about the winner. This person's a good winner. This person wouldn't be a good winner. This person looks like they're going to win. This person doesn't look like they're going to win. It's really only this season where we've started to talk about these people are good players and these people aren't as good players. Genevieve is the perfect example of great player, but just not a great winner, at least right now. I think Survivor 50 is a big check mark for me. I'd love to see Genevieve on Survivor 50. I'd love to see her in a pool with a bunch of players who have been successful, who have done really well. Yeah, I mean, it's not going to work out for her this season based on the way that she's played and based on the kind of perception that's in the game right now. But, man, I'd love to see her again.
Me too. I'm a big Genevieve fan. I will say I'm just happy that we called it. Because it was looking
immediately.
It was looking a little hairy, like episode 7, 8. A lot of people, they were moving Genevieve up in their contender rankings, and the last few episodes she's been moving down and Rachel's been moving up in the consensus. And where was Genevieve at episode 1 for Will West? 16?
I was 15. I was right there.
You were 15.
Right
where
there.
was Rachel episode 1? Number 1.
All right. We'll get to that. Relax.
We'll get to it. But yeah, no, it's unfortunate because I don't want us to rag on Genevieve's game, because I think realistically, yes, I think targeting Saul was a bad move, but I get the idea on paper, because her logic is Lavo can't stick together forever, and that she didn't want Teeny and Saul to team up against Genevieve, because Saul and Teeny, they were really, 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 really tight. And I think Genevieve banked on winning Teeny back, which, to be fair, that's honestly a risk I would take, especially over Saul, someone she's blindsided before.
Absolutely.
And so I understand the move. I mean, it didn't work out. It sucks, whatever. But it's not like this horrific move. And I still think she is the best player on the season. I think put her on, 50 simulations, I think she wins more than anyone else. I just think this is the 1 in 50 where she doesn't win. Kind of like Probe's speech in the beginning of 46.
Yeah, sometimes you do everything right and you just don't win. I don't think Genevieve did everything necessarily right this season, but she certainly didn't do a whole lot of wrong. I think threat management's going to be key for her when playing this season back, maybe in a returnee spot. I think that it's just about the perception this season, and it's about the way it's kind of shaping up. Because there was a big emphasis on getting rid of some pretty strong players early on, getting rid of people that were either threatening or too exposed early on. Like Rome was way too exposed. And then someone like Gabe, Genevieve, Kyle, those people were exposed and were big threats in the game. Sierra, you could argue, was a big threat in the game as well. Saul was getting there. All those people were not pushovers anymore. They were all becoming big threats in the game. And Genevieve is going to be the last of that kind of regimen, because what's happening is the 5 players that are left, which starts with Caroline, are all trending towards that finale. And I won't call it a battle of the GOATs, because some of them have really great stories and really great winning chances. But in game sense, yeah. I mean, Genevieve and Sam are the 2 biggest threats left in the game, besides maybe Rachel now, baby Teeny. And now you got these 5 kind of battling it out. I thought this episode for Caroline was nice. I thought it was reconnecting with Sue at the beginning. I thought that was good. If she were not slashed, for me, she'd be the third, the 1% winner option. Yeah. If it weren't Rachel and Andy, because that's obviously our top 2. If she weren't slashed, she'd be that third option. I think, Will, you have a different opinion. But, I feel like she's played a good game. She's played a good game. She hasn't been overexposed, which has been kind of a problem and not something you want to see really a lot in the new era. Feels like she'll get taken out maybe at 5th, which is why I have her at 5th, as a random kind of jury threat, being just see ya. There's going to be some reason that Caroline's going to be really good with the jury. She could talk really well in front of the jury, and that's why she'll go. Rachel and or Andy will probably see that. But I think Caroline, that Sophie Clark comparison is genuinely perfect for Caroline, because in a sense, you call all right, Will.
I'm sorry, but I'm kind of a genius.
Listen, you've called everything this season. I'll give you some credit. Will's been pretty on fire this season.
Thank you.
And I leave that little thing of trending towards normalcy, because it just feels like we're kind of trending on the same line with Caroline until she's just going to go. And it's it's always the same. It's never nothing, but it's never enough. It's never too much, right?
Yeah.
Like, and the episode where she went on the journey, that she was, like way early on. If that was an episode where we saw a lot of Caroline, that'd be good. If it was the episode where she figured out that Sue had the idol, that would be good. We haven't had that. And while that's great in maybe an older era of Survivor, this is the new era where the winners, in a sense, have to be shoved in your face a little bit. It can't be taken away. Like the only really exception to that would be Erica or Gabler, but there's a very clear through line throughout their stories. And while Caroline has that editing consistency of those two, she doesn't have a through line. There's no Caroline through line that's going to result in her winning. I think a lot of people think that Caroline could be that real dark horse now, which she could be, but there's no through line that makes sense for her winning again.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think taking a step back to not just of Caroline, but I kind of ruled out most of Tuku during the Tiana tribal. Yeah. Because it should have been a way bigger deal for Sue and Caroline in particular and Kyle. And instead it was mainly about Rachel and Saul with the advantage. And I get why that was a big part of the episode. But Sue getting her way, Kyle betraying his ally, Caroline working with Sue and Gabe, the fact that no one got any amount of substantial screen time for such an important tribal council, it kind of made me rule out everyone because I didn't need much and I still got nothing.
Right.
And going to Caroline, I have her at 6 out of 5 because I think Genevieve has a better chance of just squeaking it out over Caroline. I could see Caroline going after Sam. 6 plays, I think the 5 will break up. They'll probably be like, hey, we can't just make it to the final 5. I think Andy and Rachel are going to get weary of Sue and Caroline being big threats. I think Teeny will join them as well, which also we're kind of showing a little bit of this episode where Caroline and Sue being together when Rachel's talking to them. And then Rachel then talked to Teeny and Andy individually. So that's why, obviously, that's a lot of thought for something that really doesn't really matter because either way, I don't see her making it to Final 4. And if she does, I think she loses, and I think she cheers on whoever beats her at fire making.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
She gets beat, she's like, yippee! You go.
I think Jay's echoing your point here, Will. It's absolutely, you're absolutely right. I think the tribal where Tiana went home was completely on the nose. That was framed not as Tuku being devastated. They have to get rid of one of their own. They like an episode emphasizing how strong their relationships are and how tight they are and how they really want to work together in the game, how they trust each other. No, it was about Rachel being on the bottom, Rachel getting an advantage from Saul, and then, they have to vote somebody out. Sue didn't even get a confessional. It's exactly right. Caroline was always... Look, I had Sue at number 1 for 2 episodes, but in hindsight, Caroline always probably had the best prospects out of winning. But yeah, I mean, I feel like she could go at 6th. I feel like her ceiling is fire making. I don't think it's going to be fire making. I think it's going to be 5th, or I think it's going to be 6th. But I don't think she's going to make the end because she would have a good shot of actually talking at the end and getting a good shot at winning. And now we're going to Teeny. Slow and steady loses the race. It feels to me like Teeny has been just kind of like she's been placated, she's kind of agreeing to whatever's going to happen, whatever will happen. We've seen that kind of, Sierra's going home. I guess I'm getting rid of Sierra. Saul's going home. I guess I got to get rid of Saul. Bless you. They're like, we're making this alliance. Great. Let's make this alliance. It can work, but it feels like Teeny's being in that GOAT position. But here's the thing. This is tough. I almost wanted to give my number 4 and my number 3 a tie and put them both at 3 because both of them seem like they're going to be losing finalists. Like, this is the most iffy for me. I feel like Teeny's story is culminating in a loss, but how does it happen? Does it happen because people are upset that she never took any agency and that she, kind of signed off on getting rid of her allies and not actually taking a stand? Or could it be her having this triumphant moment where she finally makes a move for herself, like getting rid of Caroline or Genevieve, maybe wins a challenge here or there, and then loses fire, symbolized by the burning bag last episode? It's one of those, and it's going to be in between that and the other person who is Sue. And so it's a toss-up. This is the only really... There's another iffy point of contention about Survivor 47 this episode, but we'll get to that. But for right now, it's up in the air.
Yeah. My thing with Teeny too is that if she was the winner of the season, and if she did get the jury votes and whatnot, this should have been a way better episode for Teeny. Because if you pay attention to what actually happens with Teeny's game, she does quite a bit. She's a part of the new Underdog Alliance, and she's in the core of it because she's with Andy and Rachel. And so once that alliance breaks up, she's still going to be in a good position. She also wanted Kyle gone. She did not want Genevieve gone. She wanted Kyle in particular. And for the first time all season, she had a plan, stuck to it, and got that person out. That is a crazy change of trajectory for Teeny compared to every other episode before it. But Teeny didn't get a lot this episode. She wasn't really shown a whole lot. And I felt like this episode was mainly about Rachel and Andy, more so Teeny. And she kind of took the back burner for what would have been a really, really, really good episode for her. And so that's why I dropped her, because I didn't really have her slashed last episode. I know we put it on the screen, but like I still had some faith as my 1%. The fringe pick, and you can hear why when we talked to Carson last podcast. Go watch it. Plugs. But because of that, I dropped it to 4th. I think she makes finale. I think honestly she loses fire. Not for any crazy reason, but that just seems like the most fitting place. Like, I don't know. I don't really see her getting voted out before Final 5. And even then I see Genevieve going at 5. And then I see Sue and Andy and Rachel at Final Tribal Council.
Well, that's why we had Teeny so high earlier in the season, right? We started to feel like there was a narrative potentially building for Teeny where it was, I have a hard time voting out people that I trust and that I really care about personally, right? We saw that with Asia. Oh my God. With Asia at the very beginning of the season, who was our number one. That was wow, that was a long time ago.
That was amazing.
Yeah, that was embarrassing. We saw that and we thought, okay, this is the start of a story here. There was a little bit of concern when Teeny talked about how Sierra was going home, how Sierra was her ally and then she went home, and the same with Saul. There was a little bit of concern, but there was still maybe a tiny bit of hope that she had a story with that. It's that I don't want to vote out the people I personally connect with, but I have to. And I have a hard time agreeing to the plans or really sticking my guns on one person. I think it would have been, Will, again, on the nose. It would have been absolutely perfect this episode to see Teeny have this big cathartic moment of, I'm done. I'm sticking my guns. I am sick. I am saying a name in my head and I'm going for that person and nobody's going to stop me. That bulldozing kind of method, if we see that from Teeny this episode and we see that kind of confessional with a little bit in hindsight, we'd have a much different tune. You know, this would be a great coronation-esque episode, but we didn't get that. And instead we just got kind of narration and like, oh, I want Kyle gone. It's time to get rid of Kyle. He's been, he's been immune for too long. It's time to get rid of him. That's it. We really didn't get anything else. And so there is no kind of ancillary story with Teeny.
Yeah. And it sucks because, again, I'm rooting for Teeny, but it's whatever. See you on Survivor 50.
All right.
All right. Bye.
All right. 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 Hopefully, dude, Survivor 50 better have 50 players. 50 players on Survivor 50 would be interesting.
All of them from Survivor 47.
All of them, yes. Multiplied. Times 3.
Do we want 3 Romes running around?
Oh, no, we don't. All right. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to get into the last 3, and then the Edgic. We'll be right back.
Yippee!
Think you're the most knowledgeable Survivor superfan? Well, you can put that to the test with our Fantasy Survivor game. Welcome to Bracketology, fantasy sports for reality TV. We provide fantasy football style games for your favorite shows like Survivor and many more. We also have bracket style elimination challenges. Set your picks once for the whole season to see how your prediction skills fared. And don't forget to check out the season extras like contestant info, where you can see all the bios of each contestant, and our scoring recaps that are published each episode. Download the Bracketology mobile app or play on your computer at fantasy.bracketology.tv. It's entirely free to play, and you can win some awesome prizes. Good luck.
Will, is your favorite soup bone soup?
How'd you know?
Can you say why your favorite soup is bone soup?
That's a little personal. I'm gonna break the fourth wall. So typically when we do the commercial break, whenever we have a guest or just something, I always we have like a little chat just for the people in the stream. And so I typically ask dumb questions. I asked Carson last time if he liked Snoopy, and then he said, I don't know who that is. And then I said the dog, and then he said, yeah. So that's what I do during the ad breaks.
It's ridiculous. All right. Hey, Sue.
Hi, Sue.
So Sue's been kind of edited now. She's in a weird place where she's edited as the more obvious final tribal counselor loser based on the scene with Andy last episode. In addition, now to this episode, we're getting a little bit more clarity with that, with both Sue and Andy's names being kind of dropped as like no threat, right? Like Sue and Andy are being called not threats by a couple of the people. I forget who it was this episode, like Genevieve or Sam, maybe Kyle, something like that. They were dropped as like no real threats. And that, to me, being name dropped as that in the episode tells me that final tribal council loser is likely. But she's in this kind of limbo place where she could also be the final tribal council loser, and Teeny could have a final tribal council losing story. But the question is, if there were to be some kind of final story, where does she go? The Kyle storyline's over. She got her revenge on Kyle for voting for her earlier in the season. Like, what happens now with Sue's storyline? Like, could the idol be something? I thought the idol was going to get played this episode in some way because they showed it in the previously on Survivor. They showed Sue finding the idol. They showed Rachel finding the idol. And I think, okay, an idol's going to be played. No, just, hey, they have idols. Here's a reminder.
Shout out to how mad Randy was about that. He put in the Survivor Now podcast chat. He's like, this is stupid because now we know this is going to be an idol play. And there wasn't.
Maybe we got wasn't. I think the biggest point against Sue being an FTC loser is that, Jay, you're right. She had one episode where she didn't get a confessional, and others usually get a confessional in every episode. Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I think it's tough based on that standard, but I think it just makes sense. Like, you know, there's a thing of like the standard, what it should be, what the trend is, but it's also what's just common sense. And I think Sue's story makes sense of being a final tribal council go. That's my opinion. Will?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think also, again, she reminds me of Sherry Beethman from Cara Moen. Very strong pre-merge, and then immediately fell off. Shout out to you, Sherry. Hope to see you on the podcast eventually. This is an open invitation. Silence. Anywho, my thing with Sue is that I think it being so obvious that she's a final tribal council loser could mean that she doesn't make it to the final tribal council. Maybe her not getting a confessional is the clue. Maybe it's Teeny, Andy, and Rachel. However, it still just narratively feels right. Having her called no threat, having her whole story being about being underestimated, proving that she can do it, reminds me of another player that we have pegged as a losing finalist. We'll get to him in a second, and I just feel like I don't know. I agree with basically everything you've said. I'm trying to figure out think of something new we haven't mentioned, but Sue's game is very one dimensional. And yeah, bone soup. Shout out to Bone Soup, by the way. Do you like Bone Soup?
No, I don't like Bone Soup. I think a very interesting trend that could potentially be coming out of the past couple seasons is the losing finalists, or those that are essentially big losers, right?
Yeah,
Ben from last season, Jake from 45, maybe a little bit of Heidi from 44.
Owen.
Some of those players, maybe Owen. It's weird, and I don't want to say it's this, but it could be. It's a constant mention of proving I can do it. It's saying I can do this. It's proving I can do this, right? It's saying I want to go out there and prove this. I want to go out there and right the wrong. And that translates well to playing the game and having good strategy in the game, but it doesn't really translate to winning the game. And we've kind of seen that the past couple seasons, and I feel like that's very prevalent because Sue has definitely said, I want to come out here and prove old women can do it. I want to prove it to my kids. I want to prove it to all the other people. And she's going to be a losing finalist. And someone else who has also said that they want to prove it, that they want to right the wrong, they want to fix their story. It could, it could. Yeah, it could.
This might be the theory.
But this is
this happened late.
It did. We had to do one. We do one every episode.
Yeah.
The other person who has said they really need to kind of want to prove themselves is Andy. I think on paper, it's a great positional establishment segment. He's saying he has the best relationships. The problem that I see is that we don't see him talk to these people. If we're going to see a winner in the game, I think the key difference between Andy and Rachel, right, is that Andy is talking in the confessional about how he has these great relationships, and we see him talking occasionally, but it's not in conjunction with him saying, oh, I have great relationships. Rachel is saying, oh, I'm going to go talk to Sue and make sure we're good, and then talks to Sue, and then they both end up good with each other.
Yeah.
It feels like he has a great journey, though. I feel like it was a great journey, and if it were more about that and more about I was in a terrible place and I'm coming back from that and I'm building this great web and I'm building this narrative, it would be stronger. But it just feels a lot like a Carolyn to Jam Jam ratio. That's exactly what it feels like today. It feels like Carolyn is Andy and Jam Jam is Rachel. And that's where we're trending to the end of the game.
Yeah, but even then, I feel like with Carolyn and Jam Jam, the season still felt very close. It was who's going to win the journey edit or the strategic force. Andy doesn't feel like he has a lot of win equity. It's honestly, we just have him high up because who else but Rachel? Andy's the next best thing. But Andy just seems way too negative whenever he gets his way. And I think that's going to look poorly at Final Tribal Council. I think a scene that stood out that I took note of is when he was describing Kyle and saying how he is a one-dimensional player at best and kind of talked down about him, like he wasn't a player in the game. I think that's a pretty big villainous moment. And I think that he is having a heel turn that no one's expecting. And I think that heel turn is going to take away from his journey edit and explain why he lost. I'm trying to think of a player that represents Andy's game. Part of me wants to say Ryan Ulrich from HVHV8.
Ooh.
Not crackpot, by the way. That's a really good. That.
Are you serious?
Do you agree?
Kind of.
Exactly. You see the vision, because Ryan, he wanted to go to find, or we could say Xander as well. I think Xander's a lot more.
I think Xander could be a little bit better,
a little more apt. But I think with Ryan is that Ryan tried to sell his narrative, and no one really bought it. You know, I think he wanted that David Wright underdog, fish out of water story like John Cochran, and the jury kind of flamed him, and now Ryan is like fell off the face of the earth. I think Andy's going to have a very similar approach where he's going to try to explain his game, but no one's really going to listen or buy it. And I think that's going to be his undoing at Final Tribal Council.
Yeah, I think so.
I
think that's fair. I think we could see him, maybe his handling of his relationship with Sam as this game's coming to an end, because Sam still in a way kind of relies on Andy, and Andy's kind of handling of that relationship. Could be down. And yeah, I mean, I think Caroline talking about Andy being like, beep, 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 percentage numbers, like that kind of stuff. I think that kind of flaming of Andy is very, it's very telling, right? It's very visionary of what it's going to kind of play out like, that Andy isn't really going to be taken seriously. And it kind of falls back to the very beginning of the game. Like, we can all say that Andy, is still kind of a goofball now. He's playing with strategy. He's playing smart. He's playing a decent strategic game. I think the problem is the second he had that outburst on day 3, no one wanted to take him seriously anymore. No one wanted to be like, Andy's a serious threat to win this game from like that instance, from that moment. I think that's been established this whole game. And, well, I think it's a case of can't do anything about what happened earlier in the game. In a way, I think Andy may have done it to himself. He hasn't really done a lot to change that kind of narrative. He could have been more reflective. He could have been more trusting of Sierra and Sam, at least for a little bit longer. He could have really worked on some relationships and maybe worked on his number 1 partnership with Genevieve, right? Like, that was a key feature that we thought was going to play out and be important. And that really turned out to nothing. Like, that didn't really matter at all. There could have been so many ways to go with this story, but I think Andy's kind of demeanor about the game, kind of going in like George Costanza stumbling into things from Seinfeld, I think that's been the way it's been. And I don't think there was a way this Andy could have changed that episode 1 Andy.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate, but that's kind of the beauty about journey edits, is that there is no strategic payoff in the game. You do get a lot of screen time and constant visibility on the edit, but the takeaway is that it never pans out. Honestly, what was the last Journey-esque winner that we've received besides Chris Underwood, Edge of Extinction? Because that's kind of a lob. That's kind of a gimme.
I don't know. Maybe. That's tough. Maybe Adam. You could say Adam, or maybe. I
was thinking Adam Klein.
Yeah.
In terms of like growth and change, like maybe Sarah.
Oh yeah. Oh Jay, you're on the nose.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Marianne, 100%.
I completely forgot about Marianne. That's embarrassing. I'm supposed to be like the guy that knows the random players. I'm failing. But besides Marianne, and even then, Marianne had a way different time. I think Andy's outburst, he did it to himself, as we established earlier, George Costanza. Marianne's problem was that she was a little too loud. And that is, I think that over time, players realized that's just Marianne. And that is something that she was able to grow with. I think Andy was trying to run away from a problem instead of growing with it. And I think that's his undoing.
Absolutely. No, he was trying to run away from that problem. He was trying to clean up his game. There's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But it's running away from the problem at the beginning of being like, yeah, I've had this moment, but I've reflected on that. I've like doing some doing some meditation, like calming yourself, being a calm, rational player that people can rely on later in the game. I think would be a great way to kind of cinch that storyline. But there's clearly nothing stopping our number one pick here. It feels inevitable, right?
Yep.
It is a phenomenal advantage segment. Literally gets a whole TV segment. Like there is like commercial, all of Rachel's advantage segment, commercial. Like that is very just there it is, right? It's everything is clicking. There's nothing seeming to be awry. You could argue that Genevieve not going home is bad, but I also feel like that's more setting up the hurdle that Rachel's going to make the move. She's got to block a vote now. She can do some damage. The question is, the big question now, right? We're 46 minutes into this podcast and we didn't even we haven't even talked about the big question. Are we in over our head?
Nope.
Are we too deep into this Rachel's gonna win, that kind of stuff? I mean, yeah, she's got 14 confessionals, Jay. She was topping the charts, but I'm scared. If she does fall, what is it? How does it happen? How does she fall? How does she lose this game? Because I don't want to be wrong. That we have been wrong many times this season, right? Asia going home episode 3, dead wrong. Yep. Keyshawn going home episode 4, pretty wrong about that. Saul going home, we thought he was going to be a final tribal council. We thought he was going to be a finalist, Yeah. He went home. I just hope we're not wrong, because we've had Rachel at number 1 for 4 consecutive episodes. If we're wrong, oh God, I don't want to be wrong. Well, I want to be wrong. What if Roy's right? What if Rachel goes out of fire and wins? What if Roy is right? Like, I don't want to be wrong.
But who's Andy sitting next to you? Like Sue and Teeny?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I feel like that is the only way I see Rachel going out. She has an idol in her pocket, and she knows when to hold her advantages close to her chest. She also has a block of vote. Honestly, she is probably the most powerful player right now, and the only player that sees it is Caroline, and Caroline doesn't have a lot of numbers outside of Sue. And so what I think will happen is I think that either Rachel gets outnumbered, plays her idol, and then votes out like Genevieve, right? Or Caroline, depending on when it happens. Or there's an attempted coup that Rachel just stomps because she has the numbers. I don't see Rachel getting voted out until Final Four, in which case the only way she goes is with fire. But this episode, there's something strange. I don't know if this is coincidence or whatnot, but it's why I take notes. But right before the vote scene, we hear from Kyle and Andy, and they're both talking about growth. They're both talking about things they had to change and work on in order to continue on in this game. And so Kyle says he has to be more strategically, centered, and he wants to play with, more strategy. Andy says he has to learn how to handle people's emotions and how to not treat people like AI models, kind of like Spencer Bledsoe. Rachel's confessional about this is that she just has to trust her own gut and believe in herself. And so I feel like that is something along the same lines. It continues on with the theme, but it's more of a winner quote, right? And she gets her way with the journey. She puts her head in the ring. She wins the advantage. And, narrated the fact that her going back would be a lose-lose anyway, and that no matter what happens, she is going to be sniffed at as a rat. what happens? Sam calls her not a snake, but basically says that she was lying. You can tell. And so when it's padded like that, I don't think that's a bad episode for Rachel. And I think that this was her coronation episode, just masked as, her still laying low. Because I think she's going to be a huge endgame threat, kind of like a lesser extreme Natalie Anderson in terms of like really staying under the radar until the finale.
Right. God, I hope we're right, Will. I really do.
We are.
I don't want to be wrong. I mean, Andy still has a chance. There's still a chance, but there's also this outside chance of like Sam because of the complex tribe theory and Teeny. Oh, I just don't want to be wrong. We're the show that has to be right. We have to be correct.
Hey.
We are the standard. We set the standard. If we're wrong,
can we play a quick crackpot theory thing for Jay as well for saying there's a surprise final two?
Oh God, kill me.
Jay deserves it. Jay's a day one. Let's give him a crackpot theory. I don't think that's what happens, but that could be why, and that'd
be pretty funny.
I would accept that loss. That is
I'll take that L.
That is the only L I'll take.
Yeah. All right. Let's get into the edit. Well, bam, charged colors. There you go, Jay. You're welcome for giving me the crackpot theory there. So we got Andy with the CP negative. I thought he was negative this episode. I think he's getting dogged on, called a goat, called a non-threat, the Caroline mocking, talking down about Kyle. I think that was warranted. I think Rachel CP5 is obvious. It's coming together. I mean, 5 straight complex personalities for Rachel is astonishing for someone in this era, right?
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't happen. I would love a middle of the road 3 for Rachel next episode. I think that would be fantastic. And then make the last 2 episodes really strong. Make the last 2 episodes really good. We've had under the radars from Rachel. We've had her time of not getting a lot, but just give her a little bit to calm down on. She just got 14 confessionals. Like, we don't need to overload right now.
That's fair. I do think if Genevieve goes for whatever reason next episode and she doesn't have a lot of screen time, that will be a huge red flag or just a major piece of concern.
Absolutely. For her chances. And I mean, here's Will's edgic. And I'm scared for Genevieve. I genuinely hope that she can get some good screen time, get some good content here, but it's not looking great for just based on the strip for her real chances. But there's still time. There's still time on the clock. Anything you want to know with this edgic, Will? Anything you like? You dislike?
With my edgic that I made.
All right. Well, then how about mine? Let's go back.
I agree with everything. I think a few big changes I had Kyle as a complex personality instead of middle of the road. Again, when you bring back your background or your job or story into your strategy, I think that is just a classic complex personality. And that's what Kyle did. He compared his time in foster homes to how he's going to play Survivor going forward. It just didn't pan out. Andy, again, negative tone. He's been pretty negative or mixed at best. Andy has yet to have a positive episode. The best he's had is toneless, and that's when he had his lowest visibility. Caroline, good episode. Just everything before this episode was way too weak. And I think it's like the only big change as well. Like, I think we agreed with everything else.
See, the only thing I'm scared of now, because I'm getting really paranoid right now, is that Sam's edgic strip terrifies me, because it's not bad. It's really not. There are a couple bad episodes in there. There's 3 negative episodes, but it's not bad. It's really not. Like there's still a tiny chance I'm terrified, Will. I don't want to be wrong. I don't want to be wrong.
Hi, Mrs. Powell. Why don't you like Teeny, by the way? Like, what happened in this episode that made you not like Teeny? Sue, I understand, but I'm curious. Honestly, if you want to come to the show, we might have a spot for you next episode. If you want to discuss,
maybe.
Let's
close it out. Join our Patreon. Links in the description. Join it. It's good. Get some extra content, some good content. Check out our shop. Get some merch. Get some merch from the best show on the Survivor Now podcast, Survivor Stockwatch. Follow us Instagram, Twitter, X, and then don't forget to like and subscribe. That was quick, Will. Last 2 episodes, the Quinn episode was like an hour and a half. The Carson episode was like an hour 25. Yeah. We're gonna be done in under an hour here.
Yeah, that's just. I mean, unless you want it to stall for the next 4 minutes.
What do you want to talk about for the next 4 minutes so that we can hit our hour quota?
What are some weird comparisons we can make with this cast? Let's go to some pre-jurors. Like, if we had to compare Keyshawn, you
want to get really crazy and just compare people?
Yeah. Like, who does Gabe remind you of? Ooh.
Who's Gabe remind me of?
I agree with this, Jay.
What do you think, Will? I'm not as good as at comparisons compared to you. I'm not as good as at comparisons.
Let's strip away Gabe for a second, because he was a strategic villain, had a lot of negativity to his edit and gameplay. He was very strategic. I think part of me
maybe an evolved Bradley Clyhage from Ghost Island.
I love Bradley. Oh my god. I disagree, because Bradley just had a mean streak, right? Like, Bradley, he just hated being on Malolo. He wanted to go back to Navidi.
He did. He hated it. He was so pissed.
I was thinking Cambodia Spencer.
He was nicer, though.
Was he?
Cambodia Spencer was a little bit nicer. You got a better one?
In terms of new players, who does John remind you of?
John
the
first
Levette.
boot?
The first boot. Someone who didn't really do. I got a crazy one.
Go ahead.
I got the craziest one. You have no idea. John kind of reminds me of Tina Shear from Survivor Panama. That's
what? 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 Why?
Because
why?
Because what did John and Tina do wrong? Their one episode on Survivor. John
trust somebody.
Exactly. Tina trusted the rest of the OG Kasayas, and who flipped the tide? Sari Fields.
Mm-hmm.
Then on Gata, right? Who even was the decoy backup? Annika?
It was Andy.
It was Andy.
John or Andy.
And then who flipped the script? Andy on John. Andy's the next Sari Fields. Calling it now.
Oh no. No.
But both John and Tina, they both didn't really do anything wrong. Tina should not have been the first boot of Survivor Panama. I don't know how people got away with that. That was kind of crazy. What about
It's your last one. Make it good.
My last one? Ooh, who does Adam Gentry of Cook Islands fame remind me of? Probably Sam.
That's actually not bad. It's not bad.
So
that one's the one I'll let it slide. That one was pretty good.
Make sure you comment below if you're watching this on YouTube. Who are some crazy comparisons you can make? Triple points if you can compare Dirk from Borneo to a Survivor 47 player.
I swear if you do.
I'm asking the audience.
That'd be
Goodbye.
Cool. All right. We thank you. Well, no, I didn't. Hold on. I didn't do my last thing. Will.
Jack.
This has been the Stocks.
Okay. Calm down, partner.
Anything else to say?
Mrs. Powell, is Jack normally this loud and rowdy at home? Can we we need we have the podcast for you.
We thank you all for watching this episode of Survivor Stockwatch, episode 11. Hope it was a nice, quick episode so you can get back to your families, enjoy some shopping, enjoy some Black Friday, post-Thanksgiving, pre-Christmas shenanigans. We thank you all for your time, and we will see you next episode for what we hope to God is not the end of our lives as Survivor Stockwatchers. Goodbye.